Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of the $100 Million Producers. It's Friday again, and these weeks are flying by so fast. It's unbelievable. My co-host, Andrew Cady, we're both in Vegas right now, but he's at a different hotel and cannot get decent internet service. So we decided to switch it up and do something a little different, which we did a few weeks ago with Andrew when I wasn't available. So I've brought Nicole on as somebody that you all know, and somebody that's new to origination, even though she's an old hat at mortgages, she's new to origination. And, I'm going to let her kind of pick my brain as to what I did when I was new. So Nicole, it's all you today.
Yes. All right. I'm very excited for this. I think it's cool to bring a new perspective to, topics here. I think even as one thing I'll say has made me very successful in my career, I believe, is my curiosity and willingness to kind of always be vulnerable and ask the questions. So I think even for people listening that maybe are middle of the road, in their years of loan origination or being, in mortgage, there might be questions that they think, oh, that's like kind of a silly question, or why would I ask? Or, I should, we always people get stuck with, oh, I should know that already, or I should whatever. So I'm hoping that people can kind of live vicariously through me and just hear the questions that they would want to ask, and I'm going to ask them. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll get started here. So Todd, many years you've been doing mortgages, advising people, originating different types of loans, hundreds of thousands of loans.
Well, not hundreds of thousands of loans, but thousands of loans.
Thousands. Okay, yeah. Thousands of loans, which is a lot. So you've seen a bunch. You probably have seen close to it all. If you can think back to the beginning, think about when you first got started and you didn't really know what you didn't know, if that makes sense. You kind of are like, where should I even go? Where should I get started at? What are the problems how can I foresee the problems that I'm going to have? What is something you would have started doing like way sooner had you known?
Yeah, I think, like you said, asking questions, not being afraid to be vulnerable. I feel that my career had an incredible start that most people didn't get. Just to go back a little ways, I started in the mid-90s, long time ago, probably before Nicole was born or close to it.
91, I was born.
Yeah. So you were 4 years old when I got into business. Now I really feel old. But the company that hired me, they really wanted me. Some friends of mine worked there and they touted they said this guy would be great. And they really wanted me, but they didn't have a desk for me. And they said, this was back in the days when everybody worked in offices. So they said, if you don't mind, we're going to put you back in our bullpen, which the bullpen was where all the processors and underwriters worked. It was a retail shop where I started. And, at the time, I felt kind of weird. Like I'm back there with mostly middle-aged to older women, older than me. That back in the day, almost all processors were females back then. And I was stuck back there with them. I always felt like I was stuck. Like all my buddies that were loan officers were up in the second floor, and I'm down in the first floor in that processor bullpen. And I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like an outsider, right? But it was the greatest 6 months of my career looking back, because I was able to ask questions and listen and see all these crazy problems that popped up in the processing room. And that's why later in my career, I became the guy that self-processed, because I really learned processing more than I did loan origination in the first 6 months. I mean, I was kind of learning both, but it was the greatest experience of my life looking back. There's been a couple of things in my career that I look back on that at the time I thought were negatives that turned out to be big positives. And that's one of them, So obviously nobody watching this is going to go out and find a processor office to sit in. But it just shows that ask those questions to ops people. If you work in an office where there's ops people, pick their brains when you talk to them, pick other people's originators, hopefully all the seasoned bigger producers out there that might see this are very accessible to people. Like one thing, and I know Nicole knows this, is I make myself extremely accessible to anybody that asks, I hope I never come across like I'm too busy to talk to somebody. And, and if somebody is too busy to talk to you, you don't need them in your life. Move on to somebody that's willing to. But I still, to this day, I still run across scenarios that I'm just dumbfounded by. So 27 plus years, I still learn something new probably every couple weeks.
Yeah.
So when you don't know something, just think of me that I've produced over $1 billion in revenue, $1 billion in production over my career. I don't know, thousands of loans over 27 years. And I still have to ask dumb questions sometimes because no question is really dumb.
Yes, that's right. If you change the mindset around, just think the answer is out there for you. You just have to ask. And sometimes it's hard for people to even like form the question because like I said, they don't even really know what they don't know. So even just kind of talking and like you said, picking the brain of someone who you respect, you think is doing really well, you'll eventually dig in there and kind of figure it out. Oh, okay, it seems like they did this really well. And you have to be very honest with yourself and self-reflect. I'm not that good at that. What they're explaining they did, I'm not that good at that. So now you know which direction to go. Okay, I got to get better at that, whatever it is that you just uncover.
One of the biggest problems too is that most people are taught this business by learning guidelines, and you go through your loan officer classes, your pre-education stuff that you have to do nowadays. I didn't have to do any of that because back in the day it was like you didn't even have to be licensed back in the day. Nobody even pulled a background check. Like literally my second year in the business, the guy that sat in the office next to me was a guy that had done time in prison for credit card fraud, and he's in the mortgage business with access to people's credit.
No.
It made me realize really it was a company that I realized was a great place for me to start, but I was never going to stay there because, it was like there was like no vetting of people. But that's how crazy it was back in the 90s. And that's why we had the 2008 meltdown, because there was no regulation. So, but nowadays, everybody watching this is newer, is going through the pre-education classes. They go through the testing and all that good stuff. But the problem with all that is it's written in a way that, especially when you read guidelines, it's hard to understand that stuff until you've actually done one of those loans. Like I still, if I go to the guideline, if I go to like the VA handbook or the FHA's Ginnie Mae's website or Freddie or Fannie, I still find myself lost in those weeds because it's not written in a way that's easy for people to understand, especially when you're new to this business and you've done a handful of loans.
Yep. So
crowdsourcing, I think this business is probably one of the greatest crowdsourcing businesses in all of all industries across everything. I mean, I know there's a lot of tech jobs out there where crowdsourcing is big, but I truly think that if you're not, even if you're an originator watching this and you're like in a little 2-man shop, get out there, go to association meetings, I'm in Vegas at Mastermind, anything you can go to and show up for, you're going to learn. Go where the originators are. Again, in our company, we've got hundreds of people to crowdsource, and we do that every day. I mean, you see it in our chats, like people are constantly sharing ideas. If you don't have that where you're at, call me and we'll get you on board. But more importantly, all kidding aside, if you're only at a 2-man shop and the one man that's there that hired you isn't helping you a whole lot, find other people to talk to. Go anywhere there's our loan officers.
Don't tie yourself to anyone who's going to be either bringing you down negatively or just stale and not really adding value to you. I mean, life is so short. Like, don't do that with anything in your life, let alone your career, which is, a huge deal, especially this job where you really can have so much control over your income and your quote unquote job stability. You have so much control over it, but that can also be very scary because you're in control. There's no kind of safety net to fall back on. So you have to be very aggressive, go out there, find the answers, find the right people. But you're right. We have the internet. Like, there's no excuse. Easily you can track someone down, you can reach out to them, you can give them a call, whatever it is. You just have to have no ego and no sort of like resistance to being vulnerable when you do finally get the chance to talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you work for us, obviously our internal chats, there's so much crowdsourcing. But if you work for a big retail operation, obviously, if you're watching this, you have an operation where you have a lot of people to talk to. But if you're that little broker, if you're in that broker shop with one or two people, and you don't really have those crowdsourcing abilities, you do actually Facebook. I mean, there are multiple loan officer communities on Facebook. If you're a broker, obviously the Brokers Are Better community is awesome for that. There's other ones out there too. They're a mix of retail and broker. There's unlimited
coaching groups,
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you view investing in yourself versus taking on an expense when you were very early on, not doing a ton of business, not bringing in a ton of revenue? How did you view it, or how would you advise people to view it?
Yeah, and that's a good question. It's actually a conversation me and Andrew Katie had last night, sitting at the bar with Katie Sweeney. Was quit. People get so hung up on shiny objects. Like, I know we have, like, every week on our sales hustles, we usually have some speaker in that has some product that we're offering our employees, and it's great. But when you're new and you're on a budget and you're trying to figure out where to allocate your resources, quit looking at all the shiny objects. I mean, they're not going to make you, they're there to enhance your career, but until you actually get your career going, all the little tech objects and the $99 months of this or that's not going to make or break your career. Spend that time and energy and a little bit of money on, putting together like realtor little, what do you call them? Survival kits to go to open houses. I'd much rather see a loan officer spend $100 a month making little like gift little bags and going to open houses every weekend and meeting realtors that way, instead of buying the latest tech gadget that might be cool, but it ain't going to bring business in the door. It'll enhance your business once you get to a certain level. Nicole will probably laugh at this because she knows I'm very techie. Sometimes she has to help me a little bit with things. But tech has never made my career. It's enhanced it, but I've never, like, if I look back and say last year I only did like 40 million because I only originated half the year before I kind of retired from origination, right? But the previous number of years I was like up around the $100 million mark. Maybe 5 or 6 million of that could be said that if I didn't have this gadget or this shiny object, I wouldn't have done, maybe a couple loans out of hundreds of loans,
Right.
But I think people get so caught up and they see these presentations and they hear people talk about it and they're like, oh my God, I got to have that because, and I'm not picking on HomeBot. It just popped in my head, but HomeBot, like, oh my God, I got to sign up for HomeBot and pay the whatever it is a month because it's going to, well, no, it's not. It's there to enhance you, but it's never going to find you new business with new realtors. You can build on it with that. But I think too many people get hung up on finding things to do business for them instead of going out there and just pounding the pavement. That's all this job is about, is you got to put in the effort and the time.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to ask you next, is about prospecting and generating new business before you really had a lot of real estate agent partnerships that were, solid, because that's different. Like, once you're kind of established, okay, now you have to keep adding value to them and you have to keep on top of it so that, you're not going to get complacent. They're going to leave. But what about before they even ever did a deal with you? What kind of activities were you doing to prospect and generate new business?
Yeah. So the first half of my career, I didn't really do like I was saying, there's been a few times in my career that I thought were negatives that turned out as a huge positive. So from 95 to 2008, I was mostly a refi subprime guy. Like, I didn't really go out and look for realtors. I didn't like dealing with realtors. 2008 happened, and I always look at 2008 as like, for the younger originators, it's kind of like when I would hear my grandparents talk about Pearl Harbor or something, like, oh, that's so long ago. Like, it's like that event. Like, my son, who's 23, hears about 9/11. He was born, but it's like, it was such a major event in my life, but not to his. And 2008 was that for young originators. Like, they look back on it like whatever. And I lived through it, and I had to totally refocus my business. So I had to figure out how to meet realtors. There was no refis to be had anywhere because everybody was underwater. And I just moved to a new city and I didn't know anybody in Arizona. And I just, you know what? I just had to go out there and do it. And I started finding every way possible to be a realtor, calling realtors, cold calling them, saying, hey, let's go to coffee. Everybody's doing it. They don't want to, they don't need your coffee date. They don't want to be bothered, you know. Calling 25 realtors on Monday morning is insane in my opinion, because Monday mornings is when they're trying to pull together their offers, going through their open houses. They're trying to do their work on Mondays. Like Mondays is probably one of the busiest days for realtors to not be disturbed. You know, the weekends are out there hustling, but on Mondays they're like in their offices trying to figure out offers and this and that. You know, if you're going to make cold calls to realtors, please wait until Tuesday to do it. And I know some of the coaching calls, some of the coaches out there say marketing Monday. Yeah, well, you know, put it off till Tuesday. Trust me, they'll be happy. But find different ways. I mean, I'm not saying don't cold call realtors, but find ways. Open houses. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And don't walk in there empty-handed. Have a little package put together. Like if it's just like a Red Bull and some gummy bears or some pretzel, you know, like just something. Like even if they throw it away, they'll remember that you brought it to them. You know. This event I'm at, you know, events, I get so many swag bags from events, and most of the stuff, like I don't need another Yeti with some mortgage company's name on it. I could open up a used Yeti store. I got so much swag, right? Yeah, there you go. I don't need that. But when somebody gives it to me, I remember it. You know what I mean? Like I might not ever use it, but I'll remember it. So take something to the realtors, open houses, you know, try to make it look nice, you know, and then put like a fact sheet. Like here at UMortgage, we have like a realtor cheat sheet, you know, something that gives them some value that they can use while they're at the open house board. And if they're by themselves, offer to hang out for a little bit and just chat them up, you know, but don't get in their way when they're trying to show homes. Open houses are great. You know, finding them anywhere you go, you'll find a realtor. Like if you're standing in line at a Starbucks, look around. There'll bound to be one or two or a dozen realtors sitting there typing away on their laptops. And if you just kind of keep your mind on and like look around and, you know, don't be like on top of their laptop being creepy, but just listen and you realize they're realtors, I would just simply walk by and say, don't mean to disturb you. Here's my card. If you ever need a guy that'll be available at midnight on a Sunday night when your regular loan officer isn't available, call me. I promise you I'll hustle harder than anybody. You know, something like that, just something to make them think, oh, okay. 9 out of 10 is going to throw your card away or leave it sit on that table in Starbucks, but it only takes one every 15 or 20 you meet that'll actually keep your card. So don't be shy about it. You know, restaurants, sitting in a booth at Chili's eating lunch, you'll probably hear one of the tables around you talking about real estate or mortgages, because we're in this business, we're like cockroaches. We're everywhere, you know? But again, I mean, you don't want to interrupt their lunch, but maybe as you're leaving and you see that their conversation is over or there's a pause, just walk by and slide your card on their table and say, I'm not interrupting your lunch. I just want to let you know that if you ever need somebody that'll work harder than the guy you're working with now, I'm your guy, or something, you know, just anything like that.
Yes.
But
quick little pitch.
yeah. Then the more obvious ones is like BNIs, networking groups. I rebuilt my business in Phoenix 2 ways. Again, 2008, I have no business. I'm trying to figure out how to get realtors. First thing I did was I joined every networking group available. Like, and I'll be honest with you, networking groups were like miserable to me. Like, you know, you join them, there's a person from every industry in there, from mortgages to real estate to pest control to the lady that's selling like prepaid legal to, you know, and you guys sit there and listen to their spiels for 60 seconds. But there's always realtors in those groups. And I would go, I'm not a big morning person. I would go to the one that was a breakfast one at 7 a.m. and it would kill me every Wednesday to drag my butt down the street to the 7 a.m. breakfast one. But I did it for a couple of years. So I joined every BNI networking group available. And I got 3 or 4 realtors over a course of a year out of those groups. One of them actually I still work with, and he actually is a loan officer part-time and a realtor part-time, and he actually onboarded with UMortgage about 2 weeks ago. So I don't know if he's watching, but he knows who he is. His name's Koshik. He's in Phoenix, and he actually is an employee of UMortgage that I met through a networking group years ago.
Wow.
And talk about full circle.
Yes.
But the other thing I did was, and this is back in 2008. Now it kind of rings a little bit true in this year too, the real estate market was really a mess in 2008 and 9 because of the meltdown. Not as bad, way worse than today, but we're still in a little bit of a transitionary period right now with rates being higher and people being nervous, the lack of inventory and all those things that realtors worry about. I just started calling on them and telling them I was doing a survey. And people watching this may have heard me talk about this before, but I didn't want to call and say, hey, let's go to coffee, because I knew I'd get shot down. I called and said, hey, this is Todd with JKS Mortgage. I'm not trying to get you to send me loans. I promise. I'm not here to get your business. I'm doing a housing market survey right now. And would you mind answering just a few questions for my survey? And then if you don't mind, in the next few weeks, I'll get back to you and give you the results, because we're trying to compile where this market's going right now and the hiccups and the speed bumps that we're experiencing. And what I did was I made up a list of questions. There was only a few questions on there I cared about. Most of them were like throwaway questions just to make it feel like a real survey. But I asked them, like, what's the one thing that your current loan officer does that you absolutely love, and that's why he's your loan officer? What's the one thing that you wish he did better or she did better? Is there anything about the origination mortgage side that really drives you crazy as a realtor? And then I would pepper it in with a lot of other like housing market questions, things I did not care about. Might as well have been saying, is the sky blue? Tell me your opinion, because they didn't matter. It was those three questions. And I'm taking notes. I make chit chat with them, try to get something out of them. Like, Mary lives over in Gilbert, and Mary's been at Keller Williams for 13 years. And, you kind of can get some of that information out of them. Hopefully Mary will tell me that, I hear her dog barking in the background. Oh, what's your dog? Any little bit of personal information I can get out of Mary. And then I waited like 2 weeks, and then I would call Mary back and say, hey, I just want to give you the results of the survey. I mean, again, it was a fake survey, but, I would just say, hey, like, my, 80% of the people participating feel like rates are going higher this year, or inventory is going to get tighter, whatever it was, but then I would pepper in like, Mary, it was interesting. Like, you were in the majority, like 72% said that the reason why they love working with their current loan officer is, and, I think most of the people said that, they liked their current loan officer because they trusted him or her to get their deals done or something like that. Some of them said that they got referrals back from, but almost, it was like an incredibly high number. Most all of them said that they hated the fact that loan officers were bad communicators. They were hard to get a hold of. They hated it. Like, they were always in people's voicemails. They hated voicemail. That spawned my branding, which is answer your damn phone, because I realized from that fake survey, like, it was almost like 9 out of 10 people, they all complained about communication from it. So again, I'm not saying you're going to go out and become answer your damn phone guy or girl, but by doing these surveys, you get insight into what makes these realtors tick. And it didn't matter which realtor I talked to. On the few that hated something else, I made it sound like that was the most popular answer, But, and then I peppered in like anything I got from them, like, oh, hey, how's your dog Poochie or whatever, I don't hear him today, just anything to like kind of tie it together to where they felt personalized.
Yes.
And I made, it wasn't 100. My goal was 100 calls. I didn't make that many. It was somewhere in the high 60s, I think 70s. But I still to this day work with, I think, 5 people that came out of those surveys. Now, it took over a year to get business from some of them. Some of them I got business from pretty quickly. A couple of them I didn't hear from for over a year, but they remembered me. And what they remembered was I was the guy that told them, I promise you, if you call me day or night, I'll answer your call. And I literally put them in my phone. Now, this was before I had an iPhone. This was back in the BlackBerry days, but shortly after it became iPhone. But I put them in my phone, and like to this day, I mean, my realtors are in my phone, and I have little notes in there. But more importantly, they can bypass do not disturb. They're in my list that says emergency contacts. I mean, if they call me at 3:00 in the morning, my phone will ring. I'm not going to be happy, but I'll try to gather my senses and answer that call, because I had one early on that called me at like 11:30 or quarter to midnight. I'm a night owl, so I was up. They were expecting voicemail, and they were expecting me to return their voicemail the next morning. I answered a call at like right before midnight, and I could hear on the other end of the phone, like, this panic, like, oh shit, this guy just answered. Like they were almost, I was almost waiting for it to hang up because they were like I didn't mean, I was
They
like,
were prepared. What to say?
yeah, they were like panicked, like they interrupted my sleep. Immediately, it was I'm trying to remember her name. I think her name was Jane, but I remember I said, "Oh, hey Jane," I immediately like, and used her name so to let her know I knew it was her. And she was like, apologize. I'm like, don't apologize. I would have let you go to voicemail if I was sleeping or busy, but I'm always available, Jane, remember. And from that, she like went back and told coworkers like, oh my God, this guy really will be available if you need him. So just little things like that to tie my branding in. So, and again, I'm not saying that that's what everybody's branding should be. Find something that is unique that you'll do and brand yourself to it.
Yes, exactly. Just be reliable with whatever it is you say you're going to be, and just show up like that. And people just find you trustworthy then. And what about for, we only have like a couple minutes, but the last thing, what about for tracking? Do you find it important to track certain things, and what are those metrics that you track in your business, like leads, credit pulls, the source of where the referrals are coming from, like, and how do you kind of use these metrics to make decisions then going forward in your business?
Yeah. So of course, I always track where the leads are coming from. If it's a referral from a real estate agent, if it's a referral from a previous client, that's always key. I had a thing where I tried to, well, once a deal was under contract, I do a touch point every Friday with the listing agent and the buyer's agent. And then during the week, if something happens, like a milestone happens. But regardless, every single Friday, I had a touch point with both the listing agent and the buyer's agent, religiously. Even if there was nothing to say, but hey, hope you have a great weekend. There's no new news. I made sure that they had a touch point so they knew that I was engaged throughout the process. So that's once it's under contract. With customers, once I did pre-approvals, because, I'm sure that people watching this right now are like, oh my God, I got pre-approvals all over the place, but they're, trying to find homes or this or that, once they're pre-approved, again, you need to touch base with that customer once a week, because if you don't, and you say, oh, Mr. Smith's out looking for homes, and you just let them go for a month without talking to them because you figure they'll call me when they find a home, in that month, their coworker may be like, hey, I just closed my house with the guy at XYZ Mortgage. You should check him out. I know you're looking for a house. If you don't stay top of mind with that customer, even though you're the one holding the pre-approval, they will shop and go somewhere else, quite frankly, or they could. I also would do it. That also gave me an opportunity to do a touch point with the realtor involved that they were attached to, and I would just call and say, hey, Jane, just want to let you know I just got off the phone with Joe Smith, and I know you guys still haven't found anything, but everything's still good on this pre-approval. He seems like he's in pretty positive mood still. Or I would tell her, I'd say, hey, Jane, he seems really discouraged right now. What can we do to try to, help? And I always say, what can we do? Again, it reinforces to the realtors that I'm their partner. So that's kind of like every pre-approval I touch base every week with. Tracking, where they came from, because all my leads were referrals. I didn't buy leads or anything like that. So I would also try to touch base with the people that referred them. If they weren't a realtor, I would, go back to Mary, said, hey, I really appreciate you, referring your cousin Joe, and always make sure you touch base with those referrals and thank them, even if they haven't closed, if they're just in the beginning process. So, but yeah, I think just staying top of mind, even, and then going back through, like, customers that have said, well, I'm going to put the home buying process on hold. I'm just frustrated. Rates are too high. I mean, I still have a bunch of pre-approvals from 2022, even though I'm not originating anymore, that I still try to touch base with at once a week. I usually do it on the weekends now, just to see what's going on with them. And the beauty of that is that I can then call the realtor back and say, hey, I know that Joe told you last August he was going to wait. I just want to let you know, I just talked to him and he's still waiting, but it feels like he's getting closer. You might want to touch base with him yourself this coming week. Don't do it today because I don't want him knowing I ran back to you, but touch base with Joe this week, And when the 2-1 buy down came out, I resurrected a bunch of customers that were waiting because they didn't like the payments. and my realtors were like ecstatic. Like all of a sudden I had all these people that were like waiting that now went back into the market. So you'll be surprised that just by reaching out, maybe coming up with something new, like the new FHA mortgage insurance and stuff is lower. Maybe you can take them from conventional to that because it make a cheaper payment, or offer the 1-1, 2-1, 3-1 buy down. Find something to create new activity with old customers that were like on the fence and now waiting for some miraculous new rate or something.
Yes, exactly. Basically, the whole theme of what you just said is be proactive. Yes, have your data in order, but don't overthink it. I think is the key. Is what I'm hearing from a lot of people. Is like, don't go for the shiny objects. Don't get that shiny object syndrome. Don't try to be so in the weeds with how you're sorting and tracking your data. Just make sure it's tracked somewhere. You can easily access it. You are accessing every day, and then you're being proactive with what you find and what you see and what's out there. And never waiting for anything to come to you, or never assuming anyone's going to call you back or text you back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that I'm anywhere near the smartest guy in this business at all. Like, I think I've learned a lot in this business, but I think that everything that's made my career successful to this date has been my willingness to listen, learn, and more importantly, just outwork the next guy. I mean, and I'm not saying you have to work 80 hours a week, but if you want to work, if you have kids at home and everything else, find smart working hours, find ways to set yourself apart from the other people. And again, I mean, I'm it's Friday, reach out to your agents and say, hey, look, I just want to remind you, I work when you work, and I know you're going to be out hustling this weekend. So call me when you need anything. Just remind them that you're available for them, and I think just outworking beats outbraining anybody any day of the week in this business,
Definitely.
Without brain.
We just made new words.
So yeah. Well, this time went by fast. So
it did. That was awesome. Great. I'm glad we have this in the internet forever. We can always go back to it and watch it. Thank you for your time, Todd, as always. And thank you for having me as a special guest. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. I'll see you Monday morning on our normal stuff if I don't see you before that.
Yes. All right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.